Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. So Microsoft has been making a number of investments to help developers create trustworthy apps and to make sure that those apps can be quickly and easily adopted by customers, all while helping those customers stay confident that their data is secure and that their compliance requirements are being met. So we want to talk to you about a few of these investments today, and I want to start with publisher verification. This is a bit of a sneak peek at something that we will be talking about in a couple weeks at Build in some of the sessions that Jeremy mentioned, and then we'll have another few sessions as well where we'll cover this. So make sure to tune into Build to learn more about this. But I'd like to give you a quick overview now. So really, at its core, publisher verification is about letting developers prove their authenticity. And this is kind of the first step in the journey towards creating a trustworthy app. And it helps increase customer trust in your apps by letting them know that you are actually an authentic publisher with a valid identity. And this helps customers distinguish, valid apps from developers they know and trust who have had their identities verified from apps that are trying to spoof the identities of legitimate developers and get unauthorized access to customer data. And it's kind of this first step in this series of building blocks towards building customer trust in your applications. So in a nutshell, what we're doing here is we didn't want to force anybody to go out and redo any sort of verification process if they've already done it. And a lot of you, especially folks who might have an app listed in AppSource or Azure Marketplace, or might have participated in a developer program when you were building an app for Teams or an Office add-in, or participated in any other sort of developer program with Microsoft over the years, you might already have a Microsoft Partner Network account or an MPN account in Partner Center. And you might have gone through a process to verify your identity when signing up for that MPN account before you could participate in some of these programs. So what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to take that verified identity that you already have, and you'll be able to associate it with your app registrations in Azure AD. Now, this can be done with any app registration, but it is most relevant for apps that use OAuth and OpenID Connect to sign users in and request access to data using Microsoft consumer accounts or Azure AD accounts on the organizational side, as well as apps that call server-side APIs like Microsoft Graph, and for apps that are registered in Azure AD as multi-tenant. Now, this can certainly be done, like I said, on other types of apps, but this is where the most value is. And for these apps, what publisher verification will do is it'll increase customer trust by proving the developer's authentic, the publisher's authentic. It'll result in several pieces of improved branding for the application across various surfaces, and we'll see an example of that in a moment. And it will help these apps get easier adoption, especially in big enterprises, especially in cases where customers are, very cognizant of the security and compliance footprint of their organization, and where customers are extra sensitive to the sorts of apps, especially OAuth apps, that can get access to data in their organizations. Going through publisher verification is, the first major step in the journey towards making sure those sorts of customers can adopt these apps as low friction without feeling like they're making a sacrifice on security and compliance. So let's take a look at what this will actually look like on one specific surface. So this is the user consent screen that you've probably seen a whole bunch of times. When an app requests access to a consumer user's data or organizational data, the user or the admin will be prompted for consent. And you can see here that Prosware has gone through the publisher verification process, and they have the blue check mark next to their company name. Now, while this is a really nice piece of branding, I will, say this is about much more than the checkmark. In the future, admins will be able to set policies that reason over publisher verification status, and as an example, only allow apps with verified publishers to be used in their organizations. And this will also have an impact on various risk detections that run across apps in the ecosystem. So this really is a way to, increase the security and trustworthiness posture of a given app. This capability currently is in private preview, and we are open to new participants. So if you are building apps, especially apps that do meet the criteria that I mentioned on the previous slide or two, which is these are, generally speaking, multi-tenant apps that are calling APIs like Graph, that use OAuth and OpenID Connect. You can go to that aka.ms link there. There's a quick form, just ask you a couple of basic questions, and we can get you enrolled in the private preview. So that's just a whirlwind tour. Like I mentioned, stay tuned for Build to hear more about this. And now I will pass it off to Leanna and Tony.
Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate that. This can make a huge difference, I think, in terms of the trust associated with what developers are building. So I've been excited to see you working through this with the teams and get the partners involved. Are there partners already doing this already? And is there any experience you could share of how it's changed their experience, or is this private preview brand new that you're pulling people into?
Yes, so we've got a handful of partners who have gone through the process, who already have the badge showing up. And we've had some really good feedback so far, and people are pretty excited about being able to, prove that they're authentic and kind of increase customer trust in their apps and, get lower friction adoption.
Awesome, that's great. Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so thanks, Jeremy.
The next evolution of this is to talk about app certification. So Tony and Liana have joined to talk a little bit more about that. So thanks for joining the call today.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, so basically the M365 certification program was designed, for a number of reasons, but one of the primary ones was to help give customers comfort that their data was being handled in a secure manner by third-party applications. It's also, going to be a differentiator for you in the marketplace as well. It's got some basic building block levels. Again, we just talked about publisher verification, and then publisher attestation allows you to provide details about your organization and the security posture of your application. Building on that, we go to the certification program, which again is designed to provide a great level of trust in the marketplace for your application in the customer community. We'll talk about these in the more next slides, but I want to go ahead and introduce you to Liana now to talk you through publisher attestation.
Yeah, so the third-party publisher self-attestation was developed about this time last year within the team's engineering team, and it was built as a way to increase adoption of third-party apps. So we were running into customers, or in this case, IT admins, not enabling third-party apps because they didn't know if those apps met the security standards of their organization. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we were running into app developers who were constantly filling out RFPs for customers, which I'm sure you all are probably very familiar with. So the solution was to work with the app developers directly and offer them a way to self-attest to their application security and compliance posture. And we make that information readily available for the IT admins or anyone else to consume. So the goals of the program include speeding up an organization's security and compliance internal review timeline. So we want to increase the third-party app adoption, and we want to make the information necessary to make those decisions easily available for the gatekeepers, in most cases, the IT admins. Building upon that point, we aim to present app data in a convenient manner and in a consistent format. So every application, the data is displayed in the same format, making it easy to interpret for the IT admin. And the third goal is to improve transparency and strengthen trust between developers and enterprise organizations. So what the actual publisher attestation is, we ask 118 questions across 90 plus different vectors, and we collect information in three main categories. So there's the general information that includes contact information, licensing information, location of the headquarters. So if a customer is looking to move forward and needs to reach the app developer, they know who to contact and, more importantly, how to contact them. Data handling is the next category. So what data does the app collect and why? Why does it collect the data? Does the app use Graph APIs? And if so, what are the scopes of the permissions that it seeks? Where's the data stored? Who has access to it? Really those sorts of questions. And then the last category is security and compliance. So we've integrated with MCAS to show which standards have been met: SOC, ISO, HIPAA, etc., those sorts of things. Other questions include, have they had any data breaches recently? What's their plan of action if they do have a data breach? What's the password policy? Do they use multi-factor authentication? And then we have about 60 more questions that all relate to that. So right now, the Publisher Attestation is just for Teams apps, but it is our top priority to expand the scope to include Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, and web apps that leverage Graph APIs. And so far, we've had about 70 partners complete the self-attestation for their Teams apps, and we've had really positive feedback from those that have done it. So I'll pass it off to Tony now to talk about the next tier in our program.
Before we go there, one thing I think a lot of people don't realize is when they're in AppSource, if you look, for instance, at the Adobe sign for Teams in AppSource here, appsource.microsoft.com, on the left-hand side, you'll actually see the Microsoft 365 Security and Compliance section. And clicking on that Microsoft 365 certification link takes you into that information that Liana was just talking about. So the ability to see kind of the general information of where their headquarters and what their sign-in privacy policies in terms of service are, as well as kind of from a security perspective, if they've had a breach and data encryption at rest. And so there's a lot of information you can garner. And we see a lot more customers asking about what types of compliance they support to across the board. And if you scroll to the top here, you can see the data handling and the general tabs too. I've posted a link to this overall site here in the chat, so you can definitely go check that out. You know, searching for Microsoft 365 app certification will get you to land you to the site page as well. So it's worth checking in this state if you've already acquired applications to see what information those publishers have. And we'd ask you that if you're using applications inside of your tenants already that maybe aren't in this list, they encourage them to go through this process as well. Sorry, Tony, to jump in there.
Oh, no, that's great. That takes care of half my presentation. I appreciate it. So the certification program really builds on the attestation elements. And so all of the information that you have provided through the self-attestation process, will carry through to the certification element. It's going to be a differentiator in the marketplace. You know, as you just saw on some of those screens, you'll have a security badge next to your application that is only given to those that have completed the certification process. And that means, basically that you're providing additional comfort to your customers that the handling of their data is of the utmost priority for you. And, that will therefore enable them to look at your application in a different manner. As Leanna mentioned, this is also scoped to Teams apps only currently, but it is a top priority to expand beyond Teams apps. You can see on the right-hand side of the slide what will actually go through with an external security assessor that will work with you to determine application security elements. Operational security is really how you manage your business here. Things such as security patching, incident response, just kind of the things outside of the scope of application security. And then, of course, paramount to your customers, the data handling, security, and privacy elements will be key for them to understand that you're being a good custodian of their data with your application. And then the compliance checks that you see at the bottom, basically we're going to be giving you credit for external certifications such as SOC, PCI, and ISO if you've already gone through those as an organization, that will address many of the certification controls that we've got in place for this program. The next couple of slides actually will show you a bit of the marketplace. So it's kind of a repeat of what you'd seen before just now. But again, you can see in here, you've got the check mark to denote publisher attested, and then the security badge I was referencing in the certified column. So again, it's one place where your customers can go and see, the status of the applications that you've published. This, again, it's all publicly facing. This is in App Source that we just saw. And so in the middle of the screen, you can see that there's the security badge again, and then the links that Jeremy had pointed out to both Publisher Attestation and M365 certification. That will, again, take you to the detailed pages for your applications. Again, it's a publicly available space for all of your customers to go and look at the information. And, as Leanna had mentioned before, ideally, it also helps you at least lessen the amount of RFP business that you're going through right now.
So Tony, just to clarify that, because we've had discussions internally, and it's always good to share here. So the first part with the publisher attestation is something the publisher, the ISV does that basically states what the different areas are and for the different categories that we've decided to do. Right. The certification then looks at what they've stated and actually validates that all that information is correct. Is that really the way to read it?
So that's a part of it, yeah. So there is validation from the third-party security assessor, but they will also go beyond that and look for evidence for particular controls in those 4 domains. So it's I would say it's not a full-blown audit like a PCI audit or something like that, but we have selected what we feel are the most applicable controls in our marketplace to demonstrate that the ISV is taking good care of the customer's data and information.
And I think as someone, I've worked at 2 different ISVs in the past in this ecosystem, and having the ability to have this information that I can, point customers to certainly is going to increase the confidence of someone going through that purchasing thing. Typically in the deals I worked on, the deal would be closed and then the IT admins would get involved to then kind of be the people that say no. And so having this kind of information to ensure that trust is going to make a really big difference, I think, in terms of that kind of deployment.
I think
that happens once it's been purchased.
It's really a win-win-win. It's a win for the ISV because they get to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. It's a win for Microsoft because we're also protecting our customers' data, and Correct. It's a win for the customer because they've not only got the comfort that their data is being handled properly, but they can spend more time doing things other than app investigation with RFPs.
And so what's the process for people? What's the kind of call to action here? How would they go about getting self-attested right now or publisher attested right now?
So right now there's, the funnel that we're looking at is apps that are going through Partner Center that are being registered. They are notified that the self-attestation process and the certification process exists at time of app publishing, as well as the new program that Jeff introduced with the publisher verification that will funnel appropriate applications into our pipeline as well.
Okay, so if they've already got ones in there, would they get that notification, or is there a way is there a link somewhere we can send someone to go through this?
Yeah, so I will provide that. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I will provide it to this forum.
Awesome, that's excellent. We can put it in the meeting chat for people to look at later. But I'd definitely encourage people to go check out that site to see what existing publishers exist who's been through that, because you're probably using those applications, and often it's useful to have that information at hand for your own internal compliance security checks as well. Great, excellent. Thank you so much for presenting that today. And do anyone have any questions? We've got a fair group of people in here. I recognize a few partners and ISVs in attendance there. Do anyone have any questions they'd like to ask the team while they're on the call?
Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Tony. This is Matt from Rancor. A question: what are plans in the SharePoint space for certification? We just recently started with a couple of vendors to help them basically to verify their applications, and I was wondering how your current plans are in that area.
So thanks for the question. Yes, SharePoint is definitely on our roadmap. We have yet to determine exactly when it's going to fall in there, but it is on the roadmap.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Matthias.
There was one more question in the chat about independent developers and whether they can submit app certifications.
I would say absolutely. I guess if we can get some more elaboration on the question.
So I guess that
Good morning. Hi.
we can hear you.
Okay. My idea is, or my question is related to, I'm not in a company of ISV vendor or something like that. So what if I want to start an application and to publish on the app source, but I'm independent developer. So can I submit this application process to meet requirements, or I have to be part of a company?
Well, from a technical standpoint, the process would work. But now, I guess the question would be for Partner Center almost, if you're able to publish as an independent vendor, not being part of a company.
Yeah, my experience with this, with people who've been through this with a MPN, is that you would need a registered company to publish an app into the store, much like other stores out there in the internet broader than Microsoft. And so you'd have to register a company in whatever country you're in and sign up for MPN, the Microsoft Partner Network. And then that way you can register that application through that process and then go through this verification, attestation, certification process. I think there's huge value, Luis, in that perspective, because obviously being a smaller independent, having this kind of certification adds that level of trust that maybe you wouldn't have going to a larger customer up front. And obviously that's kind of the huge value there. I think there's an assumed value with some of the known software vendors out there that they're trusted from a compliance perspective. And this definitely does help independents and smaller ISVs that want to kind of have that trust with large customers that go through this process. On the Microsoft Partner Network site, it's partner.microsoft.com. There's information on how you can sign up for NPM, and it will require you to have a registered company to do that for various reasons, including tax reasons and so forth. Cool. Thank you. So look, that's great. We're bang on time as well. So I appreciate you guys with the questions, and thank you for sharing that. And if you do have any follow-up questions, you can post in this chat, post the meeting, and we can get the team to respond there too if you have anything that you'd like to ask. So thank you again for that, Tony and Liana and Jeff. Really appreciate it.